بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. I would like to acknowledge those who have passed, including my granddad a few days ago. على أرض تلاقيني, on my land you will find me. 5 months ago, I was in an open-air prison. Not physically, I could walk, I could breathe, but invisible borders followed me and I couldn't leave the house without a special green ID. A place many of you may only know as a headline. Seen not for culture, but for conflict is my homeland, Palestine. And while I was there, I took my phone out. My objective was to create space to listen. Not listen to respond, but whakarongo kia marama. We hear this phrase often, but how often do we live it is a real question. As my elders say, إذا كان الكلام من فضة فالسكوت من ذهب. If speech is made of silver, then silence is made of gold. So I asked one gentleman in the old city of Hebron, what do you wish people outside of Palestine would know? Expecting him to speak about conflict, he replied, visit us. Come see Hebron. The news may paint us in one way, but indeed we are people who love life. So I froze. And when I interviewed my 95-year-old granddad, I began to understand why. He said, Malak, growing up on our land makes us never want to leave. Like the olive trees, we stand as a form of resistance. Then he went silent. That silence taught me more than his words. I noticed the pauses between his breaths and the way my own body tensed without realizing in that moment I wasn't just hearing him. My body was fully listening. And I understood that he loved his land, not as property, not as politics, but as identity. His blood, his memories, his language, all rooted in the same soil, and that made me think about something here in Aotearoa, about Māori communities standing on whenua they are still told is not fully theirs. Free land, yet emotionally contested. I thought about friends around the table as tokens, asked to provide a Māori perspective, only for their idea to be heard, not listened to. We hear waiata and karakia, but do we listen to the kupu? The history and the meaning carried within them, that is what racism can look like in Aotearoa. Not always loud, but often quiet, normalized, and ignored. Because listening is not just hearing words, it is choosing to understand people fully, and that is how we break stereotypes, build connection, and move beyond the headlines and the borders of racism. Because when a nation truly listens, something powerful can happen. And I saw this on March 15th, 2019. 51 innocent people killed whilst praying, an act meant to divide, rooted in fear of difference and overflowing with hatred and ignorance. But something unexpected followed. People listened. Communities stood together and a nation paused long enough to understand one another's grief, and for a moment, the borders between us softened. We were all in a kind of prison together, not one of fear, but one of shared grief. So when I returned to Aotearoa, I had a question. If listening changed me, what could it change for us? Aotearoa is diverse, but diversity isn't always inclusive. Statistics may help us understand things on paper, but they reduce real people into generalizations. Pushing to the margins of society, people of minority, and forcing us into the other category. Aotearoa, we must open our ears and our eyes to realize that real unity doesn't come from measuring, but from listening. Listen to my whakaaro, because as a young ethnic wahine, I use my voice for good, often feel heard, but not listened to. When I speak, sometimes I'm told I am too outspoken, too political, too much, but in reality, I am too tired. We are too tired. Too tired of hearing old stereotypes, too tired of being judged and tokenized, too tired of shrinking ourselves to fit in, so silence, not the one that listens, but that suppresses, begins to feel safer. Like an internal prison we carry wherever we go, silence becomes more fluent than our mother tongue. Because listening alone is not enough if it doesn't lead to action. The systems we live in must be shaped by the people. The solution is simple. Learn from our communities and act from our learnings. And we can already see what this looks like. Leadership exists in our schools, in classrooms where students share their histories, not just read about it in textbooks. It exists in our communities where we share stories about our culture and traditions, and in spaces like the Race Unity Hui, where we come together to listen and connect. Because the issue is that we are all speaking, but not always speaking to each other. And spaces like this, they close that gap, that border between one another. So take a moment to imagine. If every region across Aotearoa had a race unity hui, spaces grounded in our communities where rakatahi, takata whenua, and migrant voices come together, not just to speak, but to be genuinely listened to. By bringing together members of parliament, police, principals, and community leaders across Aotearoa, we can create space where real stories shape what happens next. So when we return to our kura and our mahi, we are trained and empowered to create spaces to whakarongo, asking what is happening and what needs to change. This could look like hui, anonymous surveys, and other forms of advocating, because when we listen with intention, we begin to reflect the whakaaro of the people we serve. And change doesn't stay personal, it becomes collective. And rangatahi, find your passion and use it. For me, interviewing Palestinian people showed me the power of whakarongo ki a marama. And now I am turning these stories into a short film and co-creating a podcast about diverse rangatahi in Aotearoa. So take out your phone, your notepad, your paintbrush, your instrument. Utilize your resources to listen, to learn, to understand. One real story has the power to break stereotypes, open conversations, and remind us that the line between them and us was never as real as we thought. They were borders of racism, not inherent, but merely taught. 5 months ago, I stood in a place where movement was restricted, yet I realized on any land where people are fully listened to, the invisible borders begin to disappear. Because race unity will not come from louder voices. It is the result of fully listening. على أرض تلاقيني, on my land you will find me. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.